Morning. Okay, so we are looking at reading this morning and analysing texts of different complexity. Well, let's have a look at our aims and outcomes. By the end of this session, you must use information in text to answer a question for a particular purpose. You should identify when not to give an unsubstantiated opinion when giving suitable responses. And you should be able to examine levels of formality, including recognising passive voice and subordinate clauses. You should recognise bias through a range of devices and methods, and you could give answers to questions that require analysis and suitable responses with clear information. So, analysing texts and considering your responses. At level 2, you will be expected to understand and analyse a text and use the information in it to provide an appropriate response. So the sorts of questions you will be asked mean that you have to use the information to answer another question. It's more than just a simple comprehension activity. You'll need to support your answer with evidence from the document and make sure the question. You must make a clear choice considering the text in detail. You need to provide a comprehensive explanation supported by examples. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So these are examples of the sorts of questions that you might be asked. Your friend thinks that flexible working is a good idea. Use document 2 to say whether you agree or not. So you can see that you're being asked the question and then you're being told which document to use to answer the question. Your friend wants to apply for work experience. Use document 1 to advise what they should do. So again, referring you to which document you should get your evidence from. Your friend believes that ATHE doesn't work. Use information from document 3 to change her mind. Analyse all 3 documents or compare document X to document Y and explain which document is the most biased. Okay. So any questions so far? Okay. So how do you tackle these questions? So you'll need to support your answers with clear information. So you need to look at the text you're directed to. So if the question says to use document 1 or text B, whichever one it refers you to, then you need to look at that document, that text, and think, are there any facts or figures within this text that can back up your opinion? And it's really important to remember that the questions are not about what you already know prior to the assessment, but it's about using the information in the text as your evidence. So if we look at this question, your friend believes that ATHE doesn't work. Use information from document 3 to change her mind. You need to find evidence that ATHE does work because you're trying to change her mind. So you need to find the evidence that ATHE does work from the document provided. Okay, so we don't have the documents here. It will be much clearer if you had the documents in front of you, but we're assuming that the question is referring to international aid. that is given to countries to help them. So if you are an expert on international development or emergency aid funding and so on, that is not important in answering the question. What you need to do is to use what's in the document, because it's directing you there. Use information from document 3. So if you know nothing at all about international aid, then you are not disadvantaged, because it is not about prior knowledge. It is about the evidence that you find in the text. So any questions about that? Okay, moving on. So what would you need to focus on to answer these questions? Your friend thinks that the new shopping centre is only a retail destination. Use text A to explain what else the shopping centre can offer. So what kind of information would you be looking for in text A? So can anyone suggest what would you be looking for in text A to answer the question, or to complete the task? What information would you need?
You could look for like services that they offer or things that are available at the centre.
Excellent. So other services, so non-shopping services. Excellent, yeah. So it could be leisure. Is there a cinema? Does it mention if there's a cinema? Does it have, possibly it might have hairdresser or a barber, or beauty services, a spa. Is there a gallery? So any kind of cultural activities. Are there food outlets? So you could go there to eat. So that's what you'd be looking for in text A. Good. So the next one, your friend wants to take a guess. Use text B to advise how they could go about raising some money. So again, what type of information are you looking for?
Would you say like job opportunities?
Good. Yeah. Yeah. So you'd be looking at text B and seeing, is there any information about job opportunities, that gap year, that people might use to fund a gap year? So what reference is there to funding a gap year? So just remember, same with the previous question, you are using what is in the text. So together with you, we've come up with suggestions of what type of information we might find in the text. But remember, it is all about the evidence, the ideas, the suggestions that are in those texts, not what you already know. Okay, any questions? So formality versus informality. You will need to recognise levels of formality in text. Look at these 4 sentences and put them in order of formality, from the most formal to the least. So which of these sentences is most formal and which is least formal? I'll read them out loud. Kids are more of a presence in restaurants these days, and when I went with my lot, they absolutely loved it. It is believed that the arrival to our shores of the gastronome Raymond Blanc Sr. in the 1970s transformed British cooking forever. The modern gastropub is a pleasant and memorable experience with lots to savour and enjoy. The restaurant's okay. I wasn't allowed to smoke. So which of those sentences is most formal? Think about what features you are looking for to indicate a more...
I'd say two.
Pardon?
Two is most formal because it has references, would you say?
Yeah, because, so number 2 would be our most formal. So I'm going to renumber them with what you're telling me. Just hold on. Okay, so number 2, we're going to make that number 1. So we've got, it is believed. So informal, we're more likely to have contractions such as it's. We might have it's thought rather than it's believed. It is believed that the arrival to our shores of the gastronome, so we've got that technical vocabulary there. The transformation, it transformed British cooking. We've also got information there about the date, the name, and it's a complex sentence. So we've got a subordinate clause there, Raymond Blanc Sr. in the 1970s. Okay, so that is the most formal. Which one would be next?
Number 3.
Yeah, good. So why number 3? So what about that sentence tells you that it is or more formal? So we've got a subordinate clause. We've got with lots to savour and enjoy. So we could have the sentence without that clause and it would still make sense. So we've got a more complex sentence than some of the others. The vocabulary used is more formal. The modern gastropub, it's pleasant, memorable, lots to savour. The choice of vocabulary indicates the formality as well. Okay, so which one would be next? We're getting onto the less formal sentences now. So anybody can unmute themselves and make a suggestion. So which one would come next?
I would say 1. Kids are more.
Yeah.
Representation.
Yeah, well done. So what do you think about why is that sentence? Why does that come next?
I would say because kids is not really like a formal language. You use children.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
then yeah.
Yeah. So kids, so it's more informal language. We've got kids. We've got I went with my lot. Oh, sorry. Not sure what's happened there. Trying to underline it, but it's not really working. Yeah, so the word my lot, we've got there as well. They loved it. So it's more informal. The sentence, though, still has a level of complexity. So our final 4 is number 4. The restaurant's okay. I wasn't allowed to smoke. What tells us in that, or those couple of sentences, that it is informal? The restaurant's okay. I wasn't allowed to smoke. Okay, someone have a go?
I think I wasn't, because the apostrophe and the restaurant, the apostrophe also.
Yeah, so we've got contractions there, which are more speech-like, and that indicates that it is less formal. The restaurants, so rather than the restaurant is, we've got the restaurants. And we've also got wasn't instead of was not. Also the length of the sentences. We've got 2 sentences there, really simple sentences. The restaurant's okay. I wasn't allowed to smoke. So very simple. We haven't got any complex or technical vocabulary, and we've got contractions. Okay, well done. So formality versus informality. So this is just showing us what we've just done. So we got that right. So well done, those that contributed. So let's look at the features. We've picked out some of them already. So the passive voice, which we'll look at shortly, it is believed that the arrival to our shores of the gastronome, so we've got that technical vocabulary, Raymond Blanc Senior in the 1970s, so we've got a subordinate clause as well, transformed British cooking forever. We've got a long complex sentence, very formal. The modern gastropub, so is a pleasant and memorable experience with lots to savour and enjoy. We've got some formal vocabulary, longer words. The sentence itself is long and more complex than the ones that come next. And looking at the next sentence, kids are more of a presence in restaurants these days. And when I went with my lot, they absolutely loved it. So the first person I, the use of the first person I is less formal, more informal. And but it's still a longer sentence, so it's still more, there's still more formality to it than the next one. The restaurant's okay. I wasn't allowed to smoke. So very short, simple sentences with contractions. So I think you spotted most of those. So bearing that in mind, the features of formal and informal language. So for formal language, longer and also technical words, so more advanced vocabulary. We don't see contractions, or rarely, so it cannot rather than it can't. The third person, so he, she, one, rather than I or you. So it avoids cliches. So you may see in a sales report, the product sold extremely well. You would not see cliches such as they sold like hotcakes. So it wouldn't use those kind of cliched phrases. Excuse me. It avoids using the second person pronouns. So rather than using you, it would use one or ones, the reader, and so on. It avoids the imperative voice. So rather than starting sentences with imperative verbs or command verbs, it will be more polite, if you like. So please refer to the appendix rather than refer to the appendix. It uses the passive voice. It has been noticed that. We're going to look at that in a few moments. And there'll be longer and more complex sentences with subordinate clauses. When we look at text using informal language, we will see colloquialisms, so everyday language, speech-like language, things like kids, guy, awesome, a lot, and so on. Contractions, so can't, won't, haven't, and so on. You will see those a lot in informal texts. The use of the first and second person, so I, you, we, and so on. Cliche, so as in the example I gave previously, text, an informal text about something being sold might use those cliches like sold like hotcakes. Direct address, so you'll love this new restaurant we went to last week. So yeah, so direct address, the use of you. Commands, so listen. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you'll have those command verbs. The active voice, we have seen that. Again, we'll look at passive and active voice shortly. And the sentences will be short and simple. Okay, so any questions about those features of formal and informal language? Okay, so we've heard mention a couple of times already this morning of the passive and active voice. So let's have a look at that in some more detail. The active voice is the most common way of speaking in English. So the sentence given as an example here, he designed many classic cars in the 1960s. So the subject, he, is at the beginning of the sentence, followed by the verb, and the object comes later in the sentence. So he is the subject, and he designed. He is doing the action, so it's the active voice. The subject is doing the action. In the passive voice, that same information sounds slightly different. Many classic cars were designed in the 1960s. So the object, the classic cars, starts the sentence. We've got the verb to be in the past tense and the past form of the verb. So many classic cars were designed in the 1960s. In the passive form, the object moves to the start of the sentence, so the classic cars, because it is often more important than the subject. It is often seen in formal writing, particularly where a process is involved. So, e.g., the engine is started, then coal is added. So, the active voice would be she started the engine, she added the coal, but the passive voice, the engine is started, then coal is added. Okay, so let's try and identify here whether the active or passive voice has been used. So a key is used to open the gate. Is that active or passive?
That's passive.
It is, yeah. So how did you identify that as passive?
Because the key that he used is the first thing before at the gate, because
So the subject is at the start of the sentence, the key. So in an active voice, that could change to he used a key to open the gate. So he would be the object and the key is the subject. But here the subject is at the beginning of the sentence. A key is used. So it's passive. Michael donated his match fee.
it's active.
Good. So this is active. Michael, the subject, is doing something. He's acting. And the verb there, so the verb is the action word. So he's donating his match fee. So this could be changed to passive. The match fee was donated. So the subject would then, the match fee would then be at the start of the sentence. Okay. The charity was founded in 1909. So passive or active?
It's active.
So let's have a look. So this one is passive.
Passive, right?
Yeah, so if it was active, then it would read, they founded the charity in 1909. But here we see the charity was founded. So the subject has gone to the beginning of the sentence. It is tricky, this. It's just a case of going over lots of exercises and trying to identify them. So roses were planted there in June.
Passive.
Yeah, passive. So if it was active, then it could read, he planted the roses there in June. But it's passive, roses were planted. And finally, they were sad to leave.
It's active because it's they.
Yeah, yeah. So it's active. It starts with they with the subject. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so we have looked at direct command previously, but some of you I know have just joined us this week. Direct command is using the imperative form of the verb. So it would not be preceded by please or somebody's name or you. It just goes straight in with the verb. So as if it's a command. So informal language uses imperatives, direct commands, so more frequently. So some examples here: buy now, pay later. So something you might see on an advert. Change your lifestyle with a low carb diet. Go to Spain and see. So each of those examples start with that imperative verb. So it's more immediate, emotional, and personal. So it's engaging the reader and aiming for them to act on what you are telling them. So often used in advertising because obviously the point of advertising is for people to act on that and go and buy a product. So formal language avoids imperatives. So we could think of it as being more polite. So examples could be, please refer to diagram B. If you'd prefer, you could sell your car through Auto Supermarket. So I don't think we'd see that very often, would we? Because we don't, if in an advert, they don't want to give people an option or a choice. They want people to read the advert and go to their store, their business. Visiting Turkey is a delight. So not come to Turkey now, but visiting Turkey is a delight. So there's, as I mentioned, it's a bit more polite, is a way of explaining it. It's more of a request than a command. Any questions about that? Okay. So subordinate clauses, these are parts of a sentence that add information to the main clause, but they cannot exist on their own. So the main clause is the part of the sentence that can exist by itself. If we deleted the subordinate clause, the main clause would still make sense. However, the subordinate clause does not make sense on its own. So let's look at these examples and see if we can identify the subordinate clause. So the subordinate clause, remember, is adding some additional information. The Pope, who turned 64 on Wednesday, left for Brazil last night. So what is the subordinate clause there? What's the additional information in that sentence?
Is who turned 64.
Good. Yeah. So the main clause is that the Pope left for Brazil last night. But we've been given some additional information. The Pope's had his birthday on Wednesday. He was 64. Okay, so that's the subordinate clause. If that part of the sentence was deleted, so if we crossed it out, then the sentence still makes sense. The Pope left for Brazil last night. But that part on its own doesn't make sense as an independent sentence. So who turned 64 on Wednesday does not make sense on its own, unless you could argue if you changed it to a question, but that's not what we're doing. Who turned 64 on Wednesday, it's a subordinate clause. It needs other information to make sense. Okay, after a long bath, Michelle decided to go to bed for the night. So where's the subordinate clause in that sentence?
After the long bath.
Good. So this part would not make sense on its own. After a long bath. That is not a full sentence or a sentence that makes sense. Michelle decided to go to bed for the night. That makes sense on its own. That is the main clause. Good. Sensing a revolution, the president left in the middle of the night.
Sensing revolution.
Good. So that part does not make sense on its own. It's additional information. It tells us why the president left in the middle of the night, but the sentence, the president left in the middle of the night, would make sense on its own. Subordinate clauses turn simple sentences into complex ones and often indicate formality. So, yeah, so those longer complex sentences are an indication of formality. So what is bias in writing? This is when a writer leans towards one side of an argument or debate more than the other. And it can be slight or extreme. When studying inference in English previously, you will have encountered these features: images, repetition, euphemism, sarcasm and the use of speech marks, and use of pronouns. And those features can be used for bias too. So I want you to look at these sentences and decide how those features are used to bias a text. So we're looking at those features: images, repetition, euphemism, sarcasm and use of speech marks, and the use of pronouns. How are they used in these sentences? The basis of any good education is science, science, science. So which feature has been used?
Repetition.
Good. So we've got that repeated word, science. So that repetition is used to emphasize the writer's belief that science is the basis of a good education. Prime Minister Smith, or Silly Billy, as I call him. So we've got the beginning of a sentence there. So which of these features has been used? Prime Minister Smith, or Silly Billy, as I call him. Okay, so they're using sarcasm. So they're making fun of the Prime Minister. Silly Billy. Okay. This England team is sure to win the World Cup. So what feature have they used?
Is it euphemism?
It's not euphemism for this one. Do you have another go? So look at the punctuation. This England team is sure to win the World Cup.
No idea.
Sarcasm and the use of speech marks.
Yeah, so they're showing they're using speech marks to show sarcasm. So putting the speech marks around the word sure changes its its meaning. So rather than seriously saying the England team is sure to win the World Cup, they're meaning the opposite. So the sarcasm is when they are meaning the opposite of what they say. So somebody said, oh, this team are sure to win the World Cup, but this person, this writer doesn't believe that. So they're making fun of that word sure because they don't believe that England will win the World Cup. Okay. I may have dropped this vase, but it's their responsibility to pay for it. So which one is used? I may have dropped this vase, but it's their responsibility to pay for it. So think about that word there.
Is it the use of pronouns?
Yeah. So the use of pronoun there is showing the bias of whose responsibility it is. Okay. So other ways to detect bias in what we read is the use of exaggerated language, the use of headlines, headings, helping or hurting. So is the text helping or hurting a cause or argument? Omission, what's been left out? One-sidedness. So is there a balanced argument? Or is it just one-sided? And self or third-party interest. So does the writer have something to personally gain from what they are writing? So for instance, if an actor in a film was reviewing their own film, saying how great it was, they would obviously be benefiting from that. So it would be biased because it's serving their own interest. So the use of exaggerated language. Ignorant motorists who will not admit to the reality of climate change carry on driving everywhere, spewing filth and danger into the air. So in this example, how is the writer showing his bias through exaggerated language? What are the extreme words he uses to do this? So what is the extreme vocabulary used to show his bias? So we've got the word ignorant and spewing filth, danger. That shows us which side of the argument the writer is on. Okay, so that he is, his bias is that motorists are causing climate change. So it's using that extreme or exaggerated language and that shows us his bias or her bias. So can you think of an extreme adjective to use instead of these adjectives on the left? So the word hungry, what could we use instead?
Starve.
Starve, yeah. Starved or starving. Any others? Okay, let's have a look. Famished, nervous. Not sure about nervous. Yeah, starving, famished. Okay. Old. What could we use instead of old? So ancient, elderly, mature, good. So if we think something is good.
Excellent.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
better.
Pardon?
And better. Excellent, better.
Yeah. So good, brilliant. We've got some good examples there. Brilliant, amazing, wonderful, fabulous, marvelous. There's lots of more extreme adjectives that you could use instead of good. Cold. So if you imagine that a homeless charity are they have an advert to try and persuade people to give money to help people during the winter, and they're going
Freezing.
to freezing. They're going to describe how the homeless people feel. They're not just cold, they're freezing, perishing, or the weather is bitterly cold. It's bitter outside. Good, well done. So headlines and headings. So we've got a headline here: wonder drug invented. It destroys fat cells. So how is this used to display bias? So writers want people to read their texts, so they will encapsulate the general idea of the article or the report or the text with a headline. And they know that actually some people will only read the headline or the heading. Also, the headline and heading can attract people to read further, read the rest of the text. So this headline, wonder drug invented, it destroys fat cells. This headline suggests a drug for weight loss has been invented. However, the story underneath may reveal that it's not been tested or has terrible side effects. So even if the article itself has a more balanced view, so it tells you both sides of the argument for and against this wonder drug, the headline or the heading is biased because ultimately that is what people read first. It may be the only thing they read. So people are more likely to believe that side of the argument or to have that in their mind when they finish reading because it's the main, it's the headline, it's the first thing that they read or the only thing that they read. So there's bias in the headline there, even though the rest of the text might be more balanced. Any questions? Okay, so helping or hurting is tells us that a text, it may help or hurt a particular individual or group. So imagine there has been a demonstration against the government over civil rights. Which of these texts helps the cause of the protesters? i.e., it's biased towards them, or which text hurts them, so it's biased against them. Excuse me. Peaceful demonstrators prepare to gather in their thousands to protest against government's draconian new human rights bill. police ready themselves for angry mob of dissatisfied agitators. So which of those two sentences is biased towards the protesters, so is more helpful to so that the reader has sympathy with the protesters? Is it the first or second one?
The first.
Good. So the first sentence helps the cause because it describes the demonstrators as peaceful. They are protesting against a draconian human rights bill. Okay, so peaceful, draconian. Those words have been used to elicit sympathy from the reader and make us think that these peaceful protesters have a good reason to protest. So what about the second sentence? How is it hurting them? How is it biased against them?
Angry mob.
Good. So rather than peaceful demonstrators, they're described as an angry mob of dissatisfied agitators. And also the police, it's telling us the police are preparing. So if the police are there and they're getting ready, then it sounds negative. So the bias in a text can help or hurt a particular group by the choice of vocabulary. Any questions? Okay, so omission. And this means missing content. So missing out information can change the meaning. So if we look at this example, it's an obituary. The actor died peacefully in his sleep. The star of so many wonderful films, he was loved by family and friends alike and will be sorely missed. The actor here, in that example, is presented as a well-respected person. But what if the obituary is neglecting to mention that he went to prison for 8 years for fraud? So leaving out or omitting that information is changing the meaning, will change what the reader thinks of this actor. Okay, so we've got another example, a quote from a football manager. I've really enjoyed my time at the club, but the relegation was a low point. Now the ellipsis or the 3 dots in the middle of club and but shows us that part of his speech has been omitted. And that omission could change the meaning. The full quote was, I've really enjoyed my time at the club, winning 4 league trophies, but the relegation was a low point. So the first example, without the full quote, and it's got the omission, makes the manager seem pretty unsuccessful. The relegation was a low point, so he's got the team relegated. He doesn't sound very successful. But then we hear in the full quote that he actually won 4 league trophies. So he did have success. So can you see there that the omission can change the meaning. So the bias would be, so if a journalist is writing about the football manager's resignation and he doesn't like that manager, he is focusing on the relegation so that the readers think about the lack of success. So omission can be used to display bias, to make the reader think a certain way. So any questions about omission?
My question is, can omission also be good for a reader to maybe get a good view of the headings?
So if you look at the first example, so this actor went to prison for fraud. So we know that from the additional information on this slide. But in the obituary, it doesn't mention that. So it could be that this actor went to prison for fraud in his 20s. He's died in his 90s. He spent the rest of his life as a successful actor. He did lots of work for charity. He was a really kind man, helping younger actors to be successful. So, yes, so as you've asked, definitely the omission could be used so that we think positively of this actor. Because do we really need to remember that he went to prison for fraud 70 years ago when the rest of his life was so positive? So definitely, omission can also be used to make people think positively.
Okay.
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 So one-sidedness and lack of balance. So a fair piece of text should be balanced and multi-sided. This, however, may not suit the writer's purpose. So can you tell me what is wrong with this extract? Mobile phones are a great invention. They allow users to be contacted at any time of the day. They mean you can be online anywhere in the world. They are small and portable, and you can download games onto them to play on the bus or train. So what's wrong with this extract? So imagine you were thinking of buying a phone for a teenager and you're doing some research. What's wrong with this extract?
So it's telling you the advantage of mobile phone, the use of mobile phone.
Yeah. So what is it? Is it a balanced?
No.
No. Good. So what is it only telling us?
The good side.
Yeah. So this only tells us the good parts about mobile phones. And yeah, you know, we can agree with all the points it makes, that there are some great features of mobile phones, but for a balanced text, we need to know the other side of that as well. So it might not be good for people's mental health to be contacted 24 hours a day. For children, there may be medical evidence that shows that it's unhealthy for them to have those access to electronic games 24 hours a day, and so on. So there's no balance. So it's biased rather than being a balanced piece of text. So self-interest or third-party interest. So why might you be suspicious of this article? new treadmill to maximise your fitness. A new running machine has been devised that not only improves your fitness by 22%, but is also much gentler on your knees and other joints. The Runner Max 9000 from Gymnology is relatively unknown at the moment, but is set to take the fitness world by storm. The designer, Alan Filey, introduced the machine to a large and expectant crowd at Fitness Tech 2019 yesterday. And then under the picture, we can see in small print, it says sponsored by Gymnology. So why might we be suspicious of this article, which is, you know, raving about this new running machine, telling us how great it is? So what tells us that we might need to treat this praise for the running machine with caution? So in the text, it tells us who has made the running machine. Can anybody see that? Which company are bringing out this running machine?
Is it
Must be.
Pardon?
So the person who designed the machine is Alan Filey, and the
So that was the designer, yeah.
designer.
But in there, it also tells us the name of the company.
That's gymnastic.
Gymnology, yeah.
Gymnology, yeah.
So the Runner Max 9000 from Gymnology. But we can also see that it says this article or this paragraph here in a magazine is sponsored by Gymnology. So it only tells us how great the Runner Max 9000 running machine is. But then we can see that Gymnology, the company that are selling these machines, they have paid, so they've sponsored or they've paid for this article. Okay, so it's in their interests for the article to be full of praise and to be positive. It could be that the Runner Max 9000 is ridiculously expensive. Has it had medical trials to see that to prove that it is gentler on knees and other joints? Maybe it has, and maybe those studies showed no difference. So they could be making a claim that's not true, because it says it improves fitness by 22%. But can they quote the study that showed that? So we need to be suspicious if the person or company or product that is being praised in the text is also either the person that's written it or the person who has paid for it to be written. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if someone writes about their own product or they pay someone else, they sponsor an article in a magazine or newspaper, then it's going to be positive. They aren't going to pay money for an balanced article that might also say some negative things. So we need to treat that with caution and not believe everything that it says. Okay. So we've got the features here on the right, and some examples on the left, and we need to match them together, match them up. So, can anybody tell me which feature the first example is? As chairman of Rolls-Royce, I should know this is our best car yet. So it's the chairman of Rolls-Royce telling us that this is their best car yet.
I think this self or third party interest.
Yeah, well done. So, like the one we've just looked at, it is self or third party interest. Of course, the chairman would say it's the best car yet because he wants to sell them. Good. People were beyond trembling with fear during the ordeal. So they were beyond trembling.
I have a question here. So the
Yep.
the first sentence, could it also be one-sided?
Yeah, it is one-sided, but yes, a lot of these would also be described as one-sided. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
So people were beyond trembling. So trembling with fear is one thing, but we've got that language, they were beyond trembling. So is that something that could really happen? Is it, if people were trembling with fear, what's beyond that?
Exaggeration.
It's exaggeration, good, for effect, to tell us how fearful that they were. The unlikable singer, aged 33, complained all night. So we've got that word unlikable there. So this one is hurting. Okay, it is thought Parliament will push for their mandate tomorrow.
Is it formal?
Good, it's formal. We've not got any contractions. And so just get rid of that. Yeah, formal. The captain said all problems were resolved immediately, but we've got this ellipsis here. So what does that show us?
Omission.
Omission. Well, oh, sorry. Omission. Yeah. And we can't visit there again, pal.
Informal.
Yes, good. Informal. And so finally, the new Nokia is light, fast and easy to use with no downside. And we've just got one left, one-sidedness. So there it's clear one-sidedness because it's telling us there's no downside. So I'm assuming this is a review. But as one of you mentioned, other examples there are biased, so they could also be described as one-sided. Good. Okay, we're nearly finished now. So sorry we have overrun a little bit, but we are towards the end now. So analysing a text means finding specific information, understanding inference, providing a summary, or examining it in detail. Okay, so if we analyse a text, we are examining it in detail. Okay. What is an appropriate response? So one that is fit for purpose in relation to the question asked. One that provides significant detail, one that provides direct quotes from the text, or one that is totally comprehensive. So what is an appropriate response? So it means what is an appropriate response to a question that is asked?
Maybe B.
So we do need to include a significant level of detail. That's true. But that would be included in one of the other answers. So it's A, which could also have been all of the others, because a fit for purpose answer in relation to the question will include the right level of detailed quotes or other evidence, and it will be comprehensive. Okay, but an appropriate response means one that is fit for purpose in relation to the question asked. Okay, well done everyone. Thank you for your contributions. So we have our writing session tomorrow morning. I hope that you can attend. If you log on to Moodle, you can do some practice activities. That should help. Does anyone have any questions before we finish? Okay, well, thanks everybody. Have a great day, and hopefully I will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, teacher. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.